Now to discuss the Ukraine crisis and the one-year anniversary of the conflict, joining us is Eugene Chausovsky, a geopolitical analyst. Well, Eugene, here we are 1 year on. So looking ahead, based on what's physically happening there on the ground and what's happening politically around Russia and Ukraine, all the new weapons going in, how much longer can this go on?
Well, that depends on how and when those weapons will actually be fielded. But it looks like, at least from the perspective of Russia and President Vladimir Putin, that they're digging in for the long haul, so to speak, that this conflict can go on for several more months, if not years. They've set a military objective to take as much of south and eastern Ukraine as possible. And in the meantime, Ukraine is rearming and essentially preparing for its own offensive in the spring. So the question is how long it will take. That depends on how much they're willing to go in from both sides, but I think it could still go on for quite a bit more time.
We are expecting some potential announcements on Friday. The G7 has a virtual meeting with President Zelensky. Also reports that China will reveal a peace plan. And as we mentioned, EU discussing more military aid as well as sanctions. What will you be watching for, and what kind of impact, if any, will these events on Friday have?
Well, certainly the peace plan from China will be very interesting to watch. We've seen different attempts at mediating this conflict from a number of different parties, not only Western, but we've also seen Turkey and some Gulf states attempt to mediate. And now it will be interesting to see what China brings to the table. But ultimately, I think it's unrealistic that there's going to be any major breakthrough. And in fact, both Russia and Ukraine are still largely negotiating on the battlefield, so to speak. Russia now with its renewed offensive in eastern Ukraine, and Ukraine, as we've discussed before, planning an offensive to retake some of the territory towards Crimea, towards the east as well. So it looks like the major announcements will be the weaponry, the type of political support from the West for Ukraine, and also diplomatically if China can kind of break the deadlock that we've seen over the past year.
Well, I want to expound on that. The New York Times reported just a short time ago that President Zelensky said that he's open to meeting with Chinese leaders once he views their peace plan, once that's released. We talk about the diplomatic roles here. What role can China play here?
Well, China plays a very important role. It has relations with both Ukraine and Russia. And of course, it has not isolated Russia in the way that the West has in terms of sanctions. It's maintained its economic relationship with Russia as well. So China is very key in terms of backing, at least economically speaking, not directly in a military sense, Russia. And I think this gives it leverage. It gives it some weight that many other countries, including the West, don't have. Essentially, any countries that isolate Russia or that sanction Russia are not really in a position to play mediator. So the question will be what China actually comes to the table with, if there's any kind of new proposals. Zelensky's comments, as you mentioned, he has his own peace plan that he's presented several months ago, but that entails, the complete return of all of the territories that Russia has gained, not only since last year, but also going back to 2014. So whether there's any wiggle room on that will be very interesting to watch, and what role that China plays in that.
Eugene Chausovsky, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your insight on this issue.
Thank you.